Hey, what's going on, man? Coach Tyler here with Black Diamond Softball and Fitness, and we got a brand new episode of the Foul Pole to Foul Pole Daily Show brought to you by the Carolina Patriot Collegiate League. Man, what an incredible weekend of softball. I know it was cut short down in St. Pete in Florida due to the weather. It happened pretty much in the afternoon Saturday. Just the rain was not going to let up, and I woke up early Sunday morning hoping we were going to be able to get some of the games in, especially the late games. There was a couple of evening games. The UCF-UCLA game at 6 was going to be aired on ESPN, and the Florida State-Tennessee game was going to be at 8 o'clock. We missed those. I was really looking forward to the UCF matchup, trying to see kind of if UCLA could right the ship. And, of course, you guys know I'm a huge fan of Central Florida and Chloe Evans, Shannon Doherty, and those girls. So, a little bit left to be desired, if you will. But nonetheless, a lot of good softball was played this weekend. And also we had session 2 in the Puerto Vallarta, Mexico sort of classic, if you will. So we're going to get into that today. If you guys haven't checked out our YouTube channel yet, please do so. It's youtube.com/@foulpole2foulpole. We are doing condensed versions of some of the more exciting games, some of the games that are popular or just, the teams or whatever. So we do we take an hour and a half game and condense it down to about 15 minutes or so, just showing the highlights. We don't talk over it or anything. We just kind of let it go. We cut it up so you can get a quick game in. We usually have those out the next day. So go check that out. It's youtube.com/@foulpole2foulpole. A little bit later on today, we'll have the Stacey Johnson episode go out on our audio channels and as well as on YouTube. She is the head coach of the Corning Red Barons. So we got that. Their season's getting kicked off, playing community college ball up in New York. So if you get a chance, make sure you check that one out as well. So this weekend, pretty much Wednesday, really started the action off across the country. A lot of our teams went down to Mexico and had some really good matchups. Clemson and UC San Diego was a great game. If you're a fan of college softball, I'm sure that you're paying attention to kind of what's going on in the landscape of college ball. So you have ESPN. That really does a great job. You have Flow Softball that does a great job, and then you have Game Changer that also, man. If you can't find it anywhere else, Game Changer is the way to go. Follow your favorite college teams on Game Changer. Of course, Game Changer is not a sponsor of mine, but I use it all the time, whether it's my travel team, the high school team, or just watching college ball. It's wonderful how much airtime that the game is getting, and we all love the game. So. Starting off on Wednesday, great matchup with UC San Diego. Clemson ends up moving to 6-1 on the season after that win over UC San Diego. A couple good performances. You had all 4 pitchers pitched for the Clemson Tigers. Reagan Spencer, Brooke McCubbin, Millie Thompson, and Valerie Cagle all entered the circle. Really a good outing. It was a game that was kind of back and forth. It was never one of those that either team really put away. Valerie Cagle had a great day at the plate with that game. So they ended up getting a win over UC San Diego. And Clemson has turned into a powerhouse. I know they're new, a newer program, if you will, but John Rittman has done a really good job of getting those girls to buy in year after year. Now, after this first wave of players kind of move on from it, of course, led by Valerie Cagle, and then the program has to get into some of that longevity or consistency or whatever. Then we'll kind of see what type of program Clemson will become over the next 5 or 10 years. But knowing that facility and knowing kind of what goes on there, I think they're going to be around. And you may or may not be a fan of the stuff off the field and that kind of stuff. But nonetheless, really good squad. Clemson also picked up a win against Wichita State. Auburn beat Wichita in a 8-inning thriller. What a game. If you had a chance to watch that game, it was a great game. Wichita State really didn't have anything going until the bottom of the 5th. As a matter of fact, they were down 6-1 going into the bottom of the 7th. I'm sorry. And then Auburn was able to get 2 runs in the top of the 8th to kind of put that away. Not a whole lot of hits in that game. Each team, Wichita State ended up having 8 and Auburn had 5, but really Auburn had the game under control until the 7th inning, where it just exploded for Wichita State, which is a good deal. So you have a grand slam by Urban from Wichita State that really got things going. And then you had a couple of other runs later on in that inning, scored on a wild pitch. And it just, you never know what's going to happen in the game of softball. The game is so fast, so it can turn on a dime. And I know we have the run rule and stuff like that, and we see that and then we think that's flashy. But, man, I love those games that are like 10-8s and 12-10s and 8-6 games. Those games are awesome. So good win by Auburn. And then we move into Thursday. Had a couple of games by South Carolina. South Carolina, of course, lost Donnie Goburn from last year. Really just a national sensation, and really took the SEC by storm, and really helped put South Carolina not necessarily back on the map, but in the SEC there's a lot of teams, and South Carolina doesn't get talked about as much as they should. I mean, usually the teams that get talked about are going to be like LSU and Georgia and Florida and those teams, Alabama, but South Carolina is right there with them. I expect South Carolina to stay towards the top of the SEC this year, and possibly even host a regional this year. So, of course, that's left to be unravel as we get through the season. But Auburn picks up another big win over Utah, a 1-0 affair, and then on Saturday had a couple of big time games. South Carolina ends up beating UC San Diego 18-1 in 5 innings. Mississippi State gets the win over Clemson 6-3, which to me, I didn't see coming. I know Mississippi State is a solid squad. This year they've started the season off undefeated. That win over Clemson pushed them to 7-0 on the season, and it drops Clemson back to 6-2. It's good to see that much parity across the board early on, because you really don't know. I mean, you can even look at Oklahoma. Yeah, Oklahoma is still undefeated, and they've won now 61 or 62 games in a row, which is the record. But at the end of the day, there's the field, I think, is catching them. You look at the game that Oklahoma had with Washington and how tight that game was. As a play at the plate, was she safe? Was she out? If you're a Boomer Sooner, you're going to think she's out. If you're not, then you think she's safe. To me, at the angle you can't see, and of course they didn't have replay in that game. So that was earlier last week, that matchup. So I think one thing about Clemson, going back to the Clemson Mississippi State game, Clemson you can really never put away. It seems like they always have a chance to get there. But one thing I'm noticing is, even last year, Clemson kind of goes with Valerie Cagle. So it's kind of like, she's that Energizer bunny. Seems like she keeps going and keeps going. Last year, Clemson kind of ran out of arms in the NCAA tournament. And then this year, I don't know what Coach Rittman's going to do with her, as far as sort of not putting so much on her early on in the season. But Valerie's one heck of an athlete. Getting back into this game, a solo home run by Mackenzie Clark in the 7th. And, you'd think maybe they're coming back, this and that. But Mississippi State is able to sort of close that door out and was able to beat Clemson. So big game, big matchup. And moving into the Sunday affair, only 2 games on Sunday down in Mexico. Utah was able to get the 5-0 win over UC San Diego, and UC Davis was able to get the win over Mississippi State. So a lot of back and forth action. Of course, being down away from the campus, not a home game, not an away game, more of a neutral field game, and playing in a different country and just different things that kind of go with that. I'm glad we're able to sort of spread the love in the game of softball. One matchup from there that I think we'll take away and kind of look at the season here is that loss that South Carolina suffered to Wichita State. I think that's one they're going to want back, but it's a game that you can bounce back from because it's early in the season. So kudos to Puerto Vallarta, and kudos to NCAA getting those teams down there. I know those girls had a great trip. So jumping back over into the Clearwater Invitational, of course, that's the big tournament this weekend, or the big event this weekend. St. Pete does a great job. Evo Shield has done it for a couple of years. Shriners Children's was the major sponsor this year. All over the ESPN network. I mean, ESPNU, ACC, SEC, ESPN Plus, even the Longhorn Network. So everybody was kind of involved in this. It's a big event, and as soon as it's over every year, you're looking forward to it to the next year, because teams come from all over. Whether you got UCLA or LSU or Oklahoma State and Texas and North Carolina, Georgia Tech, UCF, Stanford. I mean, teams just it's. I won't call it the mecca of the preseason tournaments, because I love the Mary Nutter, but it's a great tournament. It's a great event, and you can kind of tell what teams are going to do later on down in the year, because they're playing top 10 matchups that they probably wouldn't get anywhere else because conference play starts. So a couple of big matchups that I thought were the outliers this weekend, or the games that kind of stood above the rest, was that game on Thursday between Wisconsin and Georgia. Heck of a game all around. It was a 6-7. It was a 7-6 game for Georgia. It was tight throughout. Wisconsin jumps on the board early in the first and gets a run. In the second, they get 3 runs. So they're up 4-0 after 2. Georgia was able to get a 2 runs back in the third and get another one back in the fourth. So you had a 4-3 game going for a while. Georgia was able to get the game tied up in the 7th, the bottom of the 7th. Both teams scored a run in the 8th. Both teams scored a run in the 9th. And then Georgia was able to close them out in the bottom of the 10th innings for a 7-6 win. It was just a great softball game. If you're about softball, it's a great game. At the end of the day, Georgia is going to be that team that's going to be around at the end of the year. I really think so. They're solid from top to bottom in the order. And they're pitching. I think they can put any of their players in the circle. Kerpix, of course, she started the game, went 1 2/3, gave up 4 hits, 4 runs. 3 of those were earned. But at the end of the day, I think she's going to right the ship. Lily Backus came in relief, pitched 5 1/3, only gave up 1 hit. And then Shelby Walters pitched 3 innings and gave up 3 hits with 2 runs. A big-time outing from Tessin Magnanimo. She went 6 2/3, gave up 7 hits and 6 earned, but threw 100 pitches and was dealing at times, almost unhittable at times. So big time rally by Georgia to kind of right the ship there late in the game. I love that matchup, so go check that matchup out. It is on my YouTube channel if you want to check out those highlights. Another big matchup that I think a lot of people were looking forward to was the Florida State-Stanford game. Florida State's able to get a win 4-0 over Stanford. And Stanford is kind of one of those teams that I think they're going to figure it out. And once they figure it out, I think they're going to be big in the Pac-12. Najee Kennedy is probably the pitcher to watch this year, just how good she was as a freshman. This year as a sophomore, can she repeat it or even get better? I mean, if she stays the same, she's going to be great. I'm looking forward to her kind of stepping the game up even more, and which is crazy to think about. But Florida State gets a big time win, 4-0 over Stanford. Great game. Not a whole lot going on early. It was more of a pitcher's duel early on. Both pitchers between Kennedy and Royalty had really good outings. Royalty from Florida State only gave up 4 hits over 5 innings. Ashton Danley came in late, gave up 1 hit in her 2 innings pitch. Kennedy went 5 2/3, 6 hits and 4 runs, but only 1 of those runs were earned. So a couple of miscues by Stanford for sure. They had 3 errors on the game, but at the end of the day, this could be a matchup in the World Series or in the regional or whatever. I think both teams will end up hosting a regional, but we could see kind of how that works. I mean, it was a great game, big win for Florida State, and nothing to hang their heads on with Stanford. Again, I think Stanford's going to be there in the end, but we'll see. A big matchup that I think that was on Friday night Really interesting and exciting game. And this game, again, is going to be on my YouTube channel. LSU and Northwestern. 13-12 win for LSU. Just a great game all around. It had it all. If you're a softball fan, it really had it all. It had big hits. It had home runs. It had errors. It had strikeouts. It had walks. It had the umpires involved. Just a great game. At the end of the day, LSU is able to stay unbeaten and get the win over Northwestern. Northwestern, man, I swear, it's like the last few years, they're just on the come. They're right there. Northwestern was able to jump out on top early in the first inning. They got 3 runs, and then they were up 5-0 going into the bottom of the second. LSU was able to get 3 runs, cut the lead, and then by the end of the third inning, it was 5-4. LSU takes the lead in the fourth. It ends up being up 7-5. Northwestern comes back and is able to right the ship and get the game level in the fifth inning. Ultimately, going into the seventh inning, ball game tied 12-12. Northwestern doesn't get anything in the seventh, and LSU is able to walk it off in the seventh. So great game all around. Go check out the highlights. That's on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/@foulpole2foulpole. Really good game. Probably one of my favorites this weekend all around. Controversy between UCF and North Carolina. It was a sort of a bunt, chop swing sort of deal from North Carolina late. The ball game is tied up, and the runner runs into the field of play instead of running in the runner's lane. The catcher's throw hits the batter runner in the back of the head. The ball caroms away, and North Carolina is able to win. So I was looking on the social medias and stuff and trying to get people's reaction. Of course, the North Carolina fans are like, hey, great, that's our first hit of the year, blah, 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 and it's a walk-off, this and that. But the umpires missed it. Umpires missed a call, and they're going to from time to time, even at the collegiate level. So my travel ball players, my high school ball players, hey, umpires aren't perfect. You got to deal with it, whatever it is. Just in this situation, it's kind of tough because it was the decision that decided the game. But at the end of the day, you move on from it. UCF 4-2 after that game, and North Carolina ends up going to 5-1 after that one. So the records could have switched, but nonetheless, great game. Not necessarily offensive from both teams, but it was a defensive matchup. It was a really good game pitched by both sides. UCF had 2 in the circle. You had Sarah Willis go 5 innings, 8 hits, 2 earned runs given up, and then Bailey McCachran goes 7 innings and gives up 6 hits and 1 run. So great day defensively from both teams. Had no errors and only 3 total runs scored throughout. So you had Chloe. She was able to get a hit from UCF. Jada Cody gets 2 hits. And then from North Carolina, you had Skylar Brooks get 3 hits in that game. So just a really good defensive day all around. So again, I'm a huge UCF fan. Anyway, another big matchup, a great game really, was Minnesota and Georgia Tech. Not too many people are high on Minnesota or Georgia Tech this year, just because of the conferences they play in, and they haven't really done too much as of late. But what a high-scoring affair. You had 25 total hits in that game and 23 total ones. So Minnesota gets the win, 12-11. At the end of the day, if you can put the ball in play and hit some home runs, you're going to give your team a chance. One of the standouts for that game was really the pitching there towards the end for Georgia Tech. It really kept them in the game. There's a lot of runs given up early, but later on in the game, as things started to settle down, Georgia Tech was able to kind of hold it on and give themselves a chance to win. Ended up coming 1 run short. They scored 4 in the 7th inning and couldn't get it done. Minnesota ends up walking it off after the game was tied in the 7th. So kudos to both teams, and there's a lot to look forward to from both programs, honestly. Georgia Tech being in the ACC, they've got to get through teams like Virginia Tech and Duke and Clemson. But at the end of the day, a lot of ball left to be played this year. Moving into Saturday, before the games were canceled, there was a couple of big-time matchups. I think the matchup that everybody was looking forward to the most was the Georgia versus Florida State game, and what had the makings of being An incredible matchup, a tight game. Georgia just went out and just stomped Florida State. There's really no other way to look at it. Jumped on them early and just did not let up. So after the second inning, it was already 14-4. Georgia just was pounding the ball. It was an incredible display of offense. The pitchers from Florida State ends up going through 5 pitchers. At the end of the day, Emma Wilson starts the game, gives up 4 hits, 5 runs. 5 of those are earned after 1 inning. So Ashton Danley comes in. She only makes it through 2/3 of an inning and gives up 6 earned runs on 3 hits. So facing 8 batters and gave up 6 runs is a lot. Georgia was just absolutely pounding the rock. The Florida State pitchers were pounding the zone, but anytime they stepped out of the zone, Georgia was composed and disciplined at the plate, and were taking their walks too. So big weekend for some of the hitters from Georgia. You look at in this game, Jada Kearney was able to get 4 RBIs. He ended up having 3 walks in that game. They were just really staying away from her. Dallas Goodnight, she had a couple of walks, and she actually had a strikeout as well. But just at the end of the day, I think both of these teams are going to be there late. Florida State started off super hot this year. People are talking about Florida State going undefeated and this and that. And now you look at them; they've had a few losses so far. Georgia goes undefeated on the season so far. They are 9-0 right now. Florida State is at 5-3. Michaela Edenfield, probably one of my favorite players to watch. She ends up going 1 for 1. And at the end of the day, we'll see. It's early. They'll get into conference play. I think both of these teams will be at the top of their conferences, battling for a conference championship. Of course, Florida State has to deal with teams like Duke and Clemson, and then Georgia, you got Alabama and LSU and Florida and even Missouri and some other teams. So a lot of ball left to be played. It's just shocking that Georgia was able to put 20 runs up on Florida State. But that's how the game goes. The last game of the day was Washington and Wisconsin. That was before sort of the rain came and canceled everything else. Washington was able to get a big-time win over Wisconsin. Wisconsin impressed me this weekend. If we go back and kind of see what Wisconsin did, they lose 7-6, tight game to Georgia. They lose 6-5, tight game to Kentucky. They do lose to Oklahoma State 9-5, but they were right there in the game for the most part of the game. And then Wisconsin loses to UCF on a 21-9 blowout, but UCF just came together in that game, boy. But I think it was most impressive on some of the losses that Wisconsin had this weekend. I think they're going to be a good, solid team this year. Don't know if they're going to make it to the postseason, but nonetheless, solid team. Another thing is LSU being undefeated on the year still. LSU is it's a name synonymous with softball, especially down here in the Southeast. Taylor Pleasant's last ride, and she's incredible ball player to watch. With UCLA, don't really know what's going on with UCLA. It's hard to figure out. They get a big time win against Florida State, and then they turn around, and last week, it's almost like their pitching didn't show up, or something crazy, a couple of miscues here and there. You look at the game that they had against Georgia. They're catching too much of the plate, and I think they're trying to do too much. Of course, Taylor Tinsley, she's young. We'll see. She ended up having 4 walks in that game, had 6 earned runs in that one as well. So a lot of hits for Georgia in that game. It had 6 hits with 7 runs. Putting the ball in play, and I think that's what matters the most. So UCLA, I think they're going to be okay, but we'll see. I mean, I was really looking forward to seeing what they were going to do against Tennessee. That game was going to be on Saturday, and then they had 2 big matchups on Sunday with North Carolina and UCF. So, sort of the softball fan in me is like I wanted to see those games, but the I don't know, the coach in me, if you will, is to say, man, can we get out of St. Pete and can we get back home? Can we get sort of settled and try to fix some of these mistakes? Can we sort of figure out what's going on with some of these injuries? I mean, I hate to see UCLA struggle early on, but I can almost guarantee you they're going to bounce back by the end of the year. They'll be in the thick of things. Facing adversity early on this season will be able to help them sort of bounce back moving forward. So, again, big weekend. There's a lot of big matchups coming up this week as well. We will keep you abreast of sort of the situations with those, where they're at and when they'll be playing. Next week, we will have a couple other big guests on our podcast as well. Big shout out to our sponsor, the Carolina Patriot Collegiate League, for jumping on board. We're kind of doing a couple things with them. So after the softball season over with, of course, we know now that college softball has their summer leagues just like college baseball does. And there's one here in Fayetteville, North Carolina. It runs through the middle of June through the middle of July. And it's an opportunity for these girls to continue to play, continue to hone their skills, and also to kind of help the young players, the incoming freshmen, get a taste of the college game. And also those girls that have hit the transfer portal for whatever reason will not get into the transfer portal. You guys know my opinion on the portal, but it gives those players a chance to get in front of some college coaches. So check that out. The Carolina Patriot Collegiate League. Check them out on Instagram, Facebook, all your social media and stuff like that. If you are a player and you want to get signed up, there is a dashboard for you to do that as well. So go check out the sponsor. It's Carolina Patriot Collegiate League. All right. That's going to do it for this one. Sort of a recap of the weekend. Appreciate you guys checking it out. If you guys know someone that likes a podcast or likes a softball podcast, make sure you share it. If you share it with a friend, be sure you tell them you love them.